7 things that we're going to talk about in terms of been discovered that sort of help us feel happier. The first item on that list is to stop worrying about your weaknesses. Kind of interesting, this is actually from Seligman's research. He went to all the great religions of the world, even though he is not a religious man himself, and tried to figure out what are all of the things that people struggled or people value all over the world, despite their differences. What are the things that they value? And so number one thing that he figured out was we don't get happier by trying to fix what's wrong with us. We get happier by pursuing our strengths. That's kind of an interesting lesson for us. I think as members of the church, a lot of us spend a lot of our time thinking about what's wrong with us, don't we? We're trying to get better and better and better, and that's a good thing to do. I'm not trying to say there's anything wrong with that, but it's not necessarily what makes us happy. What makes us feel better is when we are doing what we love. And it's not too hard for us to imagine that the Lord is pleased with that. I decided a few months ago to review my patriarchal blessing. I was trying to sort of look at what are the things that the Lord has tried to communicate to me about what I need to be doing in my life. And I decided just for fun to try to make a list of what were the things that he was telling me that were potential strengths, and what were the things that he told me that were potential weaknesses, or things that I needed to work on. It was quite interesting to me as I made that list. I thought, probably most of the things, even though I'd read it, I just never thought of it that way. I thought most of the things would probably be sort of, here's the warnings, here's the things to work on, here's the things you need to really, buck up and try to do in your life. But I actually only found about 5 of those kinds of things. And some of them I even had to stretch in order to assume that it was a weakness. For example, he said something about my being humble, and I assumed I needed to be humble, and I assumed, well, that meant that maybe I had a problem with pride, so I put that on the negative list. But I found over 40 things in this little, one-page document, basically, about my gifts, my opportunities, and my strengths. And so I think there's something foundational about the importance of working on our strengths and not just working from our weaknesses. So one of the things that I learned as a missionary when my husband and I were serving as on a mission a few years ago in Canada was that I spent all of my time as a missionary focused on what I wasn't good at. And it was a very, very long list. I am not a natural missionary by any stretch of the imagination. It doesn't come naturally to me, and even my efforts to really practice and get better at it weren't getting me very far. And I was just feeling like such a hypocrite because I was trying to get the missionaries that we were working with to have the courage to talk to people and to be better teachers and to be more in tune with the Spirit and those kinds of things. And some of those things I think came naturally to me, but many of them did not. And one night in my office, I was just moaning to the Lord about all these weaknesses that made me, I thought, completely inadequate in the calling that we were trying to serve in. And the Spirit came through loud and clear and said, Wendy, I didn't call you on a mission for your weakness. I called you for your strength. And it was like a light bulb went on in my head. This was not a new idea to me, but suddenly it was personal. And I started thinking about some of the strengths that I had that I could bring to the mission. I was the first mission president's wife in many, many decades. Who actually spoke French. I could speak to the people in their native language. I was comfortable speaking in large groups. I was a psychologist by training. I had lots of strengths that I could bring to the missionaries and to the mission field. But I had been so focused on trying to get my weaknesses up to at least neutral that I had just become miserable in focusing on those negative things. So here's a little list, I hope, because I cannot see the screen, so I'm hoping that in a second here a list is going to pop up of the virtues that Seligman found in all the religions of the world, things that people valued as positive. And I'd like that list and try to see what are 2 or 3 of those things that I really want to be known for, that I really value, and that I think are really important. 2 or 3 things that if my mother were introducing me to someone, she would say were good about me. And would you just make a note, just write down 2 or 3 of those. If you want a more scientific and systematic way of figuring out what your character virtues or strengths are, you can go to the website that I think is on there at the bottom, AuthenticHappiness.org, I think it is, which is a research site. It's free, and there are several tests on there that they'll give you a little more detailed look at this. But if you want to just kind of pick out a couple, one of the things that some of the positive psychology researchers have found is that if people will take those strengths, those character virtues, and try to figure out a new and creative way to use that strength that I already have in the coming week, it will actually give me a boost to my feelings of well-being and happiness. And if I keep doing that every week, finding a new and creative way to use some of the strengths that are important to me, I will continue to see a noticeable, significant difference in my sense of well-being and happiness. So the first thing, your first opportunity, if you want to figure out how to boost your feelings of happiness a little bit, figure out what your strengths are, and it might not be character virtues only. It might be your talents, it might be your passions, it might be things that you love or that you're good at. Find a new and creative way to use that in the coming week, and you'll see a little boost to your feelings of self-esteem. Number 2.